company in general come up with ideas?
Same objection.
An idea can come from a variety of sources.
Right, but specifically at Dreamworks and specifically from the year 2000 to the year 2004, where were the ideas coming from? If you know. If you don't know, just tell us.
It could come from Jeffrey Katzenberg. It could come from myself. It could come from a represented writer who pitches. It could come from a comic strip. It could come from an actor. It could come from a book, literary material, published literary material.
Okay. You said the idea could come from you, and in fact, you've already told us about your Kung Fu Panda idea, right? Yes?
Yes.
Other than that, were there any other ideas that you conceived of while at Dreamworks that became movies?
Well, I participated in the conception of Shark Tale.
So for my question,
Yes.
I'm asking if there are any other ideas that you personally conceived of, separate from what you participated in.
Objection, argumentative. The witness answered the question, and you restated the same question.
Yeah, I don't think, are you understanding the distinction I'm making?
No, I don't.
Okay, so with your Kung Fu Panda idea,
Yes.
you told us you're the guy. You're the one who came up with a Kung Fu fighting panda, right?
Yes.
Somebody didn't participate in that. It was you and you alone, correct?
Oh, I see. Yes.
Okay, so is there any other idea where you and you alone conceived of it and it became a movie?
Well, for example, we wanted to do a Christmas short for the Madagascar DVD starring the penguins, which are the secondary characters in the Madagascar film. So I came up with the idea for that story. I wrote that script for that story, and I was credited as a writer on that.
Okay, and that's the Madagascar.
Madagascar penguins in a Christmas caper.
And what was your idea that you conceived of with respect to that project?
The idea was to do a 10-minute short set at Christmas starring those characters. And the idea was that they were going to pull off a heist on behalf of, it sounds silly, and there was a polar bear in the zoo who was sad because he didn't have any gifts at Christmas. So the penguins decide that they were going to get a gift for the polar bear. So they leave the zoo and they go to a apartment building, like in Central Park West, and they basically pull off a Ocean's 11 style heist to get a gift for the polar bear. They bring it back, they give the gift to the polar bear, and he is very happy.
And that was a description of what aired, I take it?
Yes, and also the original idea.
Who did you work with in connection with that project that you just described at Dreamworks?
Who did I work with?
Right. Who else worked on that with you?
You're talking about directors, producers, artists?
I'm sorry, I meant people who were employed by Dreamworks. Who within Dreamworks did you work with on this, if anyone? Or did you just, you were the only?
Everyone who worked on it was employed by Dreamworks.
Okay. So who else?
The director.
Who else was part of the development staff that worked on it with you?
No one else on the development staff.
And where was this released?
It was released theatrically on the front of Wallace & Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit in October 2005, and then was later released on DVD on the Madagascar DVD in fall of 2005.
And when was it released? the first time?
Objection, asked and answered.
Theatrically in October of 2005.
And your credit on that was a written by?
Yes.
Any thanks? Special thanks?
No.
Any other credit?
No.
What's your understanding of when DreamWorks would give somebody a thanks credit on a motion picture?
Objection, calls for speculation, and vague is the Dreamworks.
Well, DreamWorks, didn't we cover this at the beginning? Do you understand when I'm saying DreamWorks? I mean the entity that you worked for that was either DreamWorks Animation, SKG, or DW Studios, or some other name that you said as you sit here you're not exactly
Well,
sure.
I worked for Dreamworks Animation from 1999 to 2004.
So that's the entity we're talking about, okay? And I think we have an understanding that if, in fact, there's a different entity that is involved, you'll be kind enough to tell us, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with that in mind, and are you more comfortable if I say DreamWorks Animation, Council?
Yes.
Okay, then I'd be happy to. With respect to DreamWorks Animation during the time period of 2000 through 2004, what's your understanding of when thanks credit would be given on a movie?
Objection, calls for speculation.
I don't know if there is a policy in place that determines whether or not people get thanks or special thanks credits.
Was there any common practice?
Same objection.
I don't know of any common practice or policy.
At any time while you were there?
No.
Okay. Who were the other people that got special thanks credit on Kung Fu Panda?
I know that I was not the only one. I believe that a gentleman named Gary Trousdale got a special thanks credit on it.
What was Mr. Trousdale's contribution?
He was the one of the first directors that we had hired to be the director of the film.
And what specifically did he contribute, if you know?
I cannot remember. I don't think his contribution was that great because we decided he was not the right person for the job.
Who else got special thanks credit on Kung Fu Panda?
I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen the credits.
What were the contributions of the other people who got special thanks credit on Kung Fu Panda?
Well, if I have
Objection,
the
lacks
names,
foundation, and calls for speculation.
if I have the names, I would be able to answer that.
Okay, fair enough. Now, in terms of your daily routine at DreamWorks Animation, you mentioned a number of things that you worked on, right?
Yes.
And, for instance, one of the things was reading scripts, correct?
Yes.
When you read the scripts, what was the method of communication, if any, that you had with your boss, Mr. Young?
Well, it depends on the reason why I was reading the script. If I was reading it as a writing sample of somebody who could be a potential writer for us to write on one of our projects. If I felt like it was somebody who was very good, I would tell Lance, this is a really great writer. We should think about meeting with this person or hiring them on a future project. If the script was not good, I generally would not tell Lance that it was a bad script unless he asked, how was that script? And I would say that it was bad. If it was a script for one of our productions, then we would read the script, or I would read the script, and then let him know what was working in the script and what was not working on the script, and what my notes would be to make it better.
So it sounds like some of your interaction with Mr. Young was oral, correct?
Yes.
And some was in writing, correct?
Yes.
You hesitated a little. Was it the?
Well,
why don't you give me a sense of how often you saw him, or were you interacting regularly, or how did that work out?
Objection, compound.
I'll rephrase. Please describe how frequently you interacted with Mr. Young during the time that you worked at Dreamworks Animation?
I would say that I saw him every day.
And you saw him every day. How frequently during the day?
Well, most likely more than once, unless we both had busy days and we were in separate meetings. But we would try to communicate at least once in some way, either by phone or in person.
What was the structure of the office in terms of your office in location to Mr. Young's office?
My office was not next to his. My office was probably... His office was in a hallway. There were other offices, I'd say 3 offices, down that hall between me and him. Then there was a turn, and then another turn, and another turn, and then my office. So our offices were not near each other.
How often did you interact with Jeffrey Katzenberg?
Almost every day.
And what was the nature of those interactions?
The nature of them?
What was the nature of your interactions with Mr. Katzenberg as compared to the nature of your interactions with Mr. Young?
Objection vague.
Do you understand the question?
The nature.
I'm trying to get a sense of what you would discuss on a day-to-day basis with Mr. Katzenberg.
We would discuss the status of projects in development.
I'm sorry, was there more?
We did not have a lot of personal conversations. They were always about work.
When you had these discussions with Mr. Katzenberg on a daily basis about the status of projects in development, was Mr. Young in general also a participant?
Yes, but not always.
How often?
I would have conversations, just Jeffrey and me. I would have conversations with Jeffrey with Lance present. I can't really quantify percentage-wise what that is. But I would say that generally, most of my contact with Jeffrey was with Lance present, but there were many times when that was not the case.
Was anybody giving you any guidance as to what you should be doing on a daily basis when you worked at Dreamworks Animation?
Sometimes, but I was generally self-sufficient. But like any office, a boss sometimes tells you to do something. But generally, I was given a lot of leeway to do, what I needed to do to move projects forward.
Okay, so forgive me if I ask this, but you reported directly to Lance Young and no one else, correct?
I directly reported to Lance Young, yes.
And so Lance Young was your superior, correct?
Yes.
So Lance Young would give you some sort of work assignment, yes?
Objection misstates the witness's testimony.
I thought that was implied, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think I would categorize it as him giving me assignments.
How would you describe it?
I would have projects that I would have to develop, and I would do what I had to do in the capacity of my job in order to develop those projects and move them forward.
you would have projects that you would have to develop.
Mhm.
Who would give you those projects? Mr. Young, Mr. Katzenberg, someone else?
Objection.
No one.
Sorry. Objection, compound, and misstates testimony,
I'll
and lacks
rephrase.
foundation as to whether or not any third party gave projects to him.
Okay, I'll rephrase. Who, if anyone, told you what projects you would have to develop?
Well, I worked on all of the projects, so it wasn't like I was assigned one over the other.
Okay, I'm trying to get a sense.
I worked on all of the projects.
When you say you worked on all of the projects, you mean all existing projects at DreamWorks Animation?
Yes.
So is it your testimony that you made the decision as to whether to work on this particular project versus another project, as long as it was one of the projects that DreamWorks Animation was working on?
Objection, vague. Are you asking on any given day how he made that decision?
You can answer.
I worked on all of the projects at DreamWorks Animation.
You-
I didn't pick.
Who picked? That's what I'm trying to get at. Who picked the
Objection,
projects?
vague as to picked what?
Picked for me to work on the project?
Yes, you worked on all of the
I
projects.
don't think there was a choice. The projects were there, somebody had to work on them, and I worked on them.
So is it the case that everybody at DreamWorks Animation worked on every project as long as they were in the development department?
Objection, vague as to everybody, calls for speculation as to everybody, and vague as to what a project is.
You can answer.
Every animated feature film project at DreamWorks Animation, while I was employed there, I worked on.
Okay, so are you trying to say everything that ultimately became a movie you worked on?
Everything that was in development
Okay.
while I was there, I worked on. Some of those projects became movies, some of them did not.
Approximately how many became movies and how many did not?
Well, ones that became movies, Shrek 2, Shrek 3, Shark Tale, Over the Hedge, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, Flushed Away, Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, B-Movie, sorry if I'm repeating some of these, Flushed Away, Monsters vs. Aliens, which was called something else when I worked on it. And also things like the Madagascar Penguins in a Christmas Caper short, the Shrek 4D ride at Universal Theme Park, the Father of the Pride animated TV series that we had done for NBC. Those are the ones that I worked on that were produced.
And what are the ones that you worked on that were not produced? Because my question was asking the percentage.
Well, I would say that